I'm sure whenever someone talks about Singapore, this is the first thing that comes to anybody's mind. Yes, the national emblem of Singapore, which is the Merlion. This is the iconic structure that we have in Singapore. Well, your visit to Singapore is incomplete if you have not visited this place. If you talk what Singapore as overall has to offer, let's go one by one. Well, it's located in the heart of Asia. So, it's never far away from for anyone to reach Singapore. Well, you cannot see Singapore on the map, it's because very, very smaller in size. If you go to the next point, you see east to west is just 42 kilometers. So we talk about ease of access due to its strategic location. Almost 4 billion people, that's more than half the population of the world, can reach Singapore in less than 7 hours flight. Now, if you talk about MICE tourism happening in Singapore, 52%, that's a major chunk of the total visitors that come to Singapore for MICE, comes from Asia, definitely due to its location. Now, if you talk about the primary contributors, definitely China being the biggest contributor, followed by Indonesia, Malaysia, Japan, and India. Now you talk about the visa requirements. Now here we have attendance from India, Bangladesh, Philippines, the Middle East. Now if you talk about Philippines, for them there's no issue because they get a visa on arrival, so they don't really have to worry about it. Now the visa regulations for most of the countries is not really very difficult. There's a minimum documentation. You just need to submit your passport, your photograph, and a filled up form. So you just have to plan up, say, around 3 to 5 days prior, and you can get your visa done. Now this varies from country to country, but it might go up to, say, around 1 week or 10 days, depending on the time of travel due to peak season. As I said, there's a lot of MICE travel happening now. The reason being vibrant, a very strong event of calendars. You take any month of the year, there is something or the other going on in Singapore. Starting from January, where we have the Art Week, the February, the very world famous Chinese New Year, we have the world's largest migration of human beings. March, we have the fashion shows. Then April, we have rugby sevens. Throughout the year, there are a lot of sporting events happening in Singapore. Now let's move on to the attractions that we have in Singapore. To begin with, we'll do the city tour. Now I always insist, so whenever you're visiting Singapore, or as a matter any country in the world, I always insist to do the city tour at the first. Once you cover the city tour, you know the essence of the city, you will be able to know the history of the city. So accordingly you can explore the city and see the next coming days of your trip. Now other than this, there are many other places that you visit, like the Singapore Flyer, about which we'll be discussing later on. Then there's a visit to the Merlion, which we discussed at the very beginning of the presentation. Other than that, we go to the Chocolate Gallery and pass by a few of the other places, mostly being all orientation tours. Next, we have the Gardens by the Bay. Now, this is a nature park spanning on over 101 hectares on the central region of Singapore, adjacent to the Marina Reservoir. Well, this was made keeping in mind the local Singaporeans. They made it as a new recreation park for the locals. But over the years, this has become one of the favorite destinations for the tourists. Now, this is about the domes. Other than the domes, you can see the entire park is really very huge, divided into 3 smaller areas, which gives you a place for cycling, walking, gives you a wonderful view of the cityscape. Now you can go at any time of this, any time of the day, and you can enjoy these areas. Now, if you talk, the main attraction are the two domes, which remain open, say around until 8:30, 9 o'clock, until 9 o'clock at night. And the last entry is somewhere around 7:45 to 8 p.m. because you need at least 1.5 hours to visit, go through the domes properly. Now, if you talk about the timings, the general tourists prefer to visit somewhere around 3:30 to 4 p.m. in the evening. They get a chance to cover both the domes. Now it's up to you whether you want to cover both the domes or one dome. Now, once you cover the two domes, then we have at 7:45 the Rhapsody show. The picture taken is during the Rhapsody show, which happens at 7:45 p.m. every day. Now, this show is free of cost. If you have come to the park, although you don't plan to visit the domes, you can still visit this show. This is completely free of cost. This is a 15-minute show, ends at 8 o'clock, and then the pickup happens at 8:15 for the return to your respective hotels. Now, this is the beautiful picture of the Marina Bay Sands. Now, these are the three towers, which is joined by the platform. The infinity pool is right on top, and this structure resembles a cruise ship. See, Marina Bay Sands is just located next to the Gardens by the Bay. So we generally combine the tours of Gardens by the Bay and Marina Bay Sands. It's both connected by a pedestrian bridge, so you can just walk over from one location to the other in less than 10 minutes. The lotus-like structure in front of the building you can see is the Arts and Science Museum. And just in front you have the Shopping Mall, where you have the show at night. Now, the opening hours similarly opens at around 9 o'clock and closes at around 9 or 10 at night. Now, during the public holidays or the peaks festivities time, it remains open until late 11 or 12 at night. So this is the picture of the Singapore Flyer, which I said earlier, that is covered during the city tour. Now you see this Singapore Flyer is amongst the oldest. Today we have a lot of flyers throughout the world, but this is amongst the oldest. Now, yes, you can see there's a car Formula 1 circuit just in front of the flyer. Yes, whenever you visit the Singapore Flyer, you can actually walk on this circuit, except for the time when actually the Formula 1 is going to happen. So if you leave September, if you go to Singapore to the Flyer at any point of the year, you can actually walk on this Formula 1 circuit. Now, as you all know, this is the Asia's largest observation wheel. Now, this is 165 meter from the ground and offers you the breathtaking panoramic views of Marina Bay and beyond. Next, we have the Wildlife Reserves Singapore. Now, this is a combination of 4 parks. The first being the Night Safari. Next, we have the Singapore Zoo, then River Safari, and the last would be Jurong Bird Park. Now, we'll be covering all these attractions one by one in brief. Now, Night Safari Singapore, this is the world's first nocturnal wildlife park. Now, this works towards saving the endangered and the threatened species. Now, it has been awarded a lot of prizes due to its effort in saving these species. Now, what do you have in Night Safari? Now, there are different things when you go to the Night Safari. The park opens sometime around 7:15 in the evening. The ideal pickup happens at around 5:30 to 6 p.m. Depending on the mode of transport that you have chosen. If it is a SIC, the pickup will be somewhere around 5 to 5:30 p.m. And if you are going by a private transport, then maybe 6 to 6:30 p.m. will be ideal time for the pickup. So this is the picture of the show that I described, the Thumbuakar performance or the fire show that happens 7 minutes. The shows are at 6:45. So just in case you miss the show at 6:45, you can come outside and then watch the shows at either 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Now, Singapore Zoo. This is the oldest in the wildlife reserves portfolio. Now, set in a rainforest environment, it's really world famous for its open concept. Now, it's home to more than 2,400 species. A lot of them again threatened. Now, zoo has attained a strong reputation internationally for its conservation initiatives and breeding programs. Next in line, we have the Universal Studios. Definitely, this is a theme park which needs no introduction. Now, this is a theme park located again in the Resorts World Sentosa. Now, this Universal Studios, a lot of people are not aware that this also is located in Sentosa Island as well. Now, it features 28 rides, shows, and attractions in 7 different theme zones. Now we have around 4 Universal Studios throughout the world, and Universal Studios Singapore being one of the most famous. There are a lot of rides, as I mentioned. Now, the few of the rides that you see on your screen are the most sought after rides. The first on your screen is the Battlestar Galactica Human vs. Cylon, one of the most sought after high-speed roller coaster rides. The next you have the Transformers 3D ride, which I believe is the most busiest ride in Universal Studios. You might have to wait in the queue for almost 1.5 hours to get into this ride, and this is really interesting. Then we have the Revenge of the Mummy. This is set on a very dark scenario to make that give you that kind of a chill feeling. This is the fastest roller coaster in Universal Studios. And if you are not really an adventure seeker, there are a lot of rides that will appeal to the small kids through the light-hearted people. Now you have the Shrek 4D attraction, and many more of them.